Hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome to FESIG. This is our 40th FESIG meeting, and it is the 2nd of August, 2017, Wednesday. It's the first Wednesday of the month. We have a very important meeting today. We have a very special guest. Before I continue, I would like to put up the PowerPoint presentation so I can then share screen right now. I have to make sure that I'm on recording as well. Yes, so there are two recordings right now. Okay, mine dropped. Okay, share screen. Here we are. Okay, welcome to FESIG again. Our free energy special interest group's 40th meeting today. And this meeting is being chaired by me, Crystal, and Dr. Prespresso. And to go to our website is truevisionofpeace.fisig.html. And you can then follow what we've been doing and what we're going to do next and who's going to stick next. So as you all know, Free Energy Special Interest Group is a platform where science meets spirituality, to put it in a nutshell. Okay, you can go to our website to read up our mission statement and what we do. Okay. Right. Sorry, I think our Zoom host has just stepped in. That's why there's a message saying that it's being logged in again. So welcome, Peter.
Hello, everyone.
Right, so I did a very quick presentation of FESIG just now, and this is our meeting agenda. So we don't have new members, we have very good old souls here. I mean, all along, you're with me in FESIG, and it's so wonderful to have you back, my brothers and sister, if Elizabeth's here as well. So we have with me here, well, I don't have to do a report of the last meeting because you can check up on the report by going into the website and you can see it. Okay, and the last meeting, of course, we had Gordon James Ganinotto talking about the pole shift. It's a little sad because he was talking about the pole shift, and it's like, and Patrick was saying that if he's right in what he's saying, we'll all be dead by April. Oh well, right. So I did say that we ought to be more positive and continue and carry on with what we're doing to, well, help free humanity with our divine mission until such time, you know, we continue with our mission. What we don't know, there could be hopefully an intervention from the Galactic Council that well, we'll be safe anyway. All right, so today we have with us our our good well, researcher and compiler of the compendium of free energy devices with us, Patrick J. Kelly, and he's one of the pillars of the study of exotic free energy. Just hold on a sec, let me just pull up okay, now he's originally from Ireland. Patrick J. Kelly is one of the pillars of the study of exotic free energy internationally. He authored an ebook, which is full of many, many chapters, and some people thought that he authored 200 ebooks, but actually it's about 200 chapters or so. No?
26.
26 chapters, yeah, he just corrected me. So Patrick published the book titled The Practical Guide to Free Energy Devices and keeps it up to date. He has painstakingly researched to develop and archived a compendium of free energy information with coverage of, oops, hang on a minute. Okay, with coverage of historic and contemporary devices for our study reference. It has 3,300 pages and growing as he updates regularly, and hundreds of devices with Patrick's personal comments on viability. This has become the school standard reference, I would say, but he's very humble. He says, no, don't say that. But I think most of us who are seriously interested in researching free energy would refer to his manual. I mean, his writings. Like a school standard reference manual for free energy scientists, researchers, developers, and students alike. I have worked diligently to bring the Patrick Kelly to you to manifest this disclosure presentation for almost a month now. Patrick has now joined FESIG's Executive Council. Hooray! Welcome. And we communicated daily to discuss logistics of this important presentation and ended up with Patrick having to physically take a train, traveling 130 miles to and fro to make this live presentation to you possible. Patrick has put in a lot of work to prepare his presentation meticulously to keep us up to speed on the latest inventions. Inventors write him from anywhere in the world to list their technology in his eBook. Well, you can go to his website is free-energy-info.com. The material on this website describes many different devices with diagrams, photographs, explanations, pointers to websites, etc. As some of the devices need an understanding of electronic circuitry, a simple step-by-step instruction course in electronics is also provided in Chapter 12, which is most, highly recommended for all of us to have that basic knowledge and understanding before we continue with making these devices. This can take someone with no previous knowledge of electronics to the level where they can read, understand, design, and build the type of circuits used with these devices. So I don't want to say anymore because we really are awaiting Patrick to disclose all these devices that he's got up his sleeves today to share with us. Okay, without much ado now, I would like to pass the microphone over to, oh, hang on a minute, before I do that, is it screen sharing? No, okay, right, I would like to share this, okay. No. Okay, so once Patrick takes over the microphone and he does his presentation, it's done, and then press will chair the second half of the meeting. And then once we've gone round the table as the practice with FESIG Meeting, there being no other business, we then adjourn to the next meeting on the 16th of August 2017, when Dr. Elizabeth Donovan will be presenting a practical regeneration. That is the title of her talk on health. And it's so amazing. She's talking about, she gave me a preview of her preparation for the presentation. She's talking about doing away with transhumanism. She's talking about a diseaseless society and ageless society where, contrary to what Gordon was saying about the pole shift, we might just live forever for as long as we want to be here on this planet, and if we want to then experience life in another planet, then we can do so, and we can just take off in these wonderful new technologies that are coming in. So it's so exciting. All right, so now I won't say anymore. I have to pass the microphone over to Patrick Kelly now. Patrick, over to you. Thank you very much. Stop sharing screen. Okay, and here's Patrick. I am in video. Spotlight video. Here we are. So this is Patrick.
Can we share this document?
Yes, I will help Patrick share the document in a moment. Patrick has never shown himself in public, and we are so honored that he's, so.
Correct.
Okay. Sure. There you are. Okay.
Okay, Fraz, I'm depending on you to tell me to stop whenever you reckon the time is sufficiently done. So this presentation for the Free Energy Special Interest Group made on the 2nd of August 2017. please understand very clearly that this presentation must not be thought of as an encouragement that you should attempt to construct anything shown here or discussed here, as this presentation is for information purposes only. Please understand that we live surrounded by an energy field of effectively unlimited power.
Sorry, pause for because I want you just putting up so you can come up.
Okay, this unlimited power is something that we can access for our own use in 20 different ways. However, if the method of accessing this power is a passive one, then please understand that you yourself can and will affect the flow of power. That effect is called the U factor. Now, if you want a copy of the information that I'm going to talk about, you can download it from www.freehyphen-energy-FESIG That will download this particular document if you want to reference it. Okay, this presentation is primarily very simple and intended for people who will see this on the web who are not members of FESIG at all. Okay, now an interesting thing that appeals to most people is a permanent magnet. And even children are very keen to play with permanent magnets. Permanent magnet is a very interesting device in that it is a room temperature superconductor of magnetic energy. So if you consider two magnets together, as shown here, the one on the left is fixed. The one on the right you can consider as being able to move vertically and only vertically. It's like it's attached to the outer edge of a disk. So in the position where it's shown there, the north of the moving magnet is attracted to the south of the fixed magnet, and the south of the moving magnet is attracted to the north of the fixed magnet. That gives you a force indicated by the red arrow, and the moving magnet is pushed downwards. Now, what happens if you leave it be is that the moving magnet goes past the fixed magnet, and the forces that have been pushing it forward reverse. And if you leave it be, the magnet will end up as close as it can get to the fixed magnet in its closest position, which everybody knows, but it's no use to most people. But what we can do is we can move the fixed magnet away before its presence becomes a problem. So if we slide the fixed magnet to the left, and the sliding apparatus has another fixed magnet to the right, replicating the position that was there before, the downwards push on the moving magnet is continued. And if you keep doing that, you can manage to get the moving magnet going continuously. Now, there are quite a large number of designs which use that principle. One of them that's well known is by Stephen Kundell, and he creates rotation of the shaft, marked number 10 in this diagram, by wobbling left and right the moving arm, which is shown here, vertically. That moves the magnet 51 either towards the magnets marked 33 or to the right towards the magnets on the right. And that causes rotation of the central power shaft. It looks more complicated when you see a lot of them done. But the thing is, every vertical strip here is a stator magnet, and it has got two rotor magnets on each side, one on each side, so there are two of them. And there are three moving so-called stator magnets, and therefore you have got four rotational magnets. Now, this is shown in considerable detail in the eBook, which you can download anytime you want. Now, that idea of moving a magnet that is a stator magnet so that it doesn't get in the way is very common. This one here is from Don Kelly of the US. He demonstrated this maybe 20 years back. He uses two motors connected to a whole series of rocker arms. And the rocker arms have got magnets attached to their ends. And when the motors are run slowly, the large disc in the middle starts to rotate. And it actually rotates quite powerfully because the force that's exerted on it is between the fixed pivot of the rocker arms and the magnets attached to the rim of the wheel. Now, there are lots of different ways to do that sort of thing. And the idea is to put in a small amount of electrical energy to get out a large amount of mechanical rotary energy. All of the rocker arms are mechanically linked together. Now, the thing you should understand about magnets is the repulsion of similar poles is slightly stronger than the attraction of dissimilar poles. In other words, if you push two north poles together, they push away from each other more powerfully than if you have a north pole and a south pole moving towards each other. It's not a great difference, but there is a difference. Now, the thing is, if you're using attraction, the magnets are left untouched, and they will last certainly for at least 11 years. Presumably, you can revitalize them anyway by sticking a coil around them and passing a strong current briefly through the coil. But if you are using the repulsion mode, people will find that in certain conditions, you will lose the magnetic power of the magnets in about 3 months. So you need to be careful what you're doing. Now, waving magnets around the place is viable, but it's not necessarily the best way of doing it. There is a very clever user called Charles Flynn, and he demonstrates a way of getting this powerful rotation without having any moving magnets. Now, the way he does that is he takes a disk magnet where the one pole is shown in yellow and one pole is shown in blue. That's going across here. And he has a rotor attached to the output shaft, which is above it. Now, the rotor above it has got just two magnets in it. And the magnetism is manipulated by 7 coils placed on top of the disk magnet. Now, the disk magnet itself is sitting with a hole through it, which allows the rotation of the central shaft. And that central shaft is both output and timing. The shaft itself supports a disk, and the disk has got 2 slots in it. And the slots allow light to pass from light-emitting diodes through the slot to either phototransistors or light-dependent resistors. And that gives you the synchronization. Now, what you do is the magnet on the rotor wouldn't move at all if there's no power to the coils, because there'd be an equal pull to the right and to the left. So it would just stay stationary. But if you power, say, the magnet on the coil on the left, it becomes a magnet, and you make the coil and the current, which is marked in blue there. That switches off the attraction, and the rotor moves off then strongly to the right. And the interesting thing, of course, is that only one coil needs to be powered per magnet in the rotor. you can double the output power by using a second that's on top, and then the two coils that are above and below at a given moment can be as many rotors as you want on a common shaft, and every time you add a rotor, you increase the power of the motor very considerably. Charles got 20,000 revs per minute from his prototype, and he was using a 9-volt dry cell battery for the input power to those coils. There's only one coil on at any given moment. Now, you can build the unit very compactly, and you have, in this particular illustration, 4 drive sets of powered rotors, and you only have to power up 2 coils on each side of each rotor at any given moment. So instead of having to do all of the coils together, you only do a few. That's a very effective and very powerful method. Now, if you take a look at permanent magnets, you'll discover that in schools, they tell you the wrong thing. The reality is that with a permanent magnet, the magnetic fields rotate around the corners of the magnet. As a result of that, if you angle the magnets, say at 45 degrees, they line up and give you what is effectively a net magnetic force across the row of magnets. Now, Steele Braden of New Zealand has found that the magnetic fields interact eventually if you keep doing that. And he's found that 5 magnets in a row is the maximum before you need to leave a gap before any other magnets are added. There are 2 boys on a YouTube video in the web. They didn't know this, but in spite of that, they got very good results with a row of magnets angled at 45 degrees. Now, the thing is, with a linear magnetic track like that, you can't bend it round into a circle without destroying the magnetic effect. That, of course, doesn't stop us using the strong magnetic push of a short length of straight track. So there's nothing to stop you putting 4 magnets attached to a rotor and putting 4 sets of 5 magnets on each side of those rotor magnets. That will give you strong rotation. And you can, if you want, put pickup coils actually underneath that particular rotor. And the magnets on the rotor will pass just above those coils, and they generate an output. Another person who has used this style of operation is Robert Adams of New Zealand. And he built a permanent magnet motor, which many people think is a pulse motor, but it isn't. It's a magnet motor. It's a very subtle design indeed, very, very subtle. Cunning design. When properly built and adjusted, it's about 800% efficient. That is, you get 8 times more power out of it than you actually put into it. And we are talking electrical power here. The highest powered version of this that I've ever heard built and described outputted at 32 kilowatts of energy, which powered both a business and a household for the person who built it. Now, the thing is, it has got 4 rotor magnets. They're long magnets. The south poles are kept in the center of the rotor. The north poles are on the extreme outside of the rotor. The drive coils and the pickup coils have got solid iron cores. Now, everybody will tell you, oh, you're going to lose power through eddy currents going sideways in those cores. Well, the answer is yes, you do, but you gain more than that because the output from the coils is bigger than the eddy currents by a long way due to the stronger pull of the rotor magnets. Okay, so what happens is when you start off, a rotor magnet gets drawn across to a drive, one of the 2 drive coils, the core of one of those two coils, or to one of the four output coil cores. The thing is, if we did nothing about it, the rotor would stop then and get pulled back to the nearest point to the actual iron core. To stop that, the iron core is surrounded by a coil, and the coil is powered up just enough to stop the backward drag of the passing magnet getting pulled back towards the core. Now that's fine as it goes, but then the rotor continues on round, and the cunning part on this is the power to the drive coil is then cut off, and when it's cut off, you get a back EMF pulse in the coil, and that reverses the magnetism of the coil, and that pushes the rotor on its way instead of hindering it. The same is done for the pickup coils. The magnet comes up, and as it's approaching the coil, you get an output of electricity through the coil around the core. And what happens is, when it reaches the coil itself, the switching disconnects the core coil, and that reverses the magnetism of the output coil, which pushes the rotor on its way. So you're getting a very large push on the rotor, both from the pull of the magnets going to the cores and from the back EMF pushes of the rotor on its way as the magnet has just passed by. Now that's only part of the situation, because Robert has then taken the output of the back EMF and he rectifies that, and he passes that back from the drive windings to the drive battery. And he does the same for the output coils, and he rectifies the back EMF pulse and pushes that back to the output. So he actually regains 95% of the drive current used in this coil, in this design of rotor, and it is very, very efficient. You will notice that in this particular diagram, he's put, this is one of Robert's diagrams, he puts the angles through which you can adjust the position of the various coils. The four output coils and the drive coils are mounted on a disc which can be rotated. This does require tuning, but you can get a very effective method of generating power doing that. All right, moving on then. A simple device that anybody can build is being produced by James Hardy. You'll find a video on YouTube from him. He uses a high power water pump, and he generates excess energy from the inertia that's generated by this operation. He directs the jet of water onto plates which are attached to a bicycle wheel, which is his rotor. The jet of water hits the actual little plate and pushes the wheel around. The wheel gets pushed around and rotates a generator. And the generator lights a light bulb, and it also powers the water pump. He has actually patented this, but the way that it works is the pump is initially powered by the mains power from an inverter, powered by a battery through a press to make button switch. It goes through a switch, powers the pump. The pump takes water from the sump, pushes it powerfully onto a rotating wheel, and then there's a drive to generator. And when the system gets going, you flip the switch here marked B, and the system powers itself. Now that's very straightforward, and it works well. A system like that, which is much more powerful, is a simplified version of a difficult engine to make, a difficult device to make, which is a tapered conical device. This one here, though, has a COP of 4. It's produced by Donny Watts, but it's one that's easy to build. It's self-powered, and you can typically get 7.5 kilowatts of power from a tiny rotor of just 250 millimeters, which is 10 inches. But this is an exponential power engine. So if you double the revs per minute, you get 4 times the output power. Also, the output power is proportional to the square of the rotor diameter. So if you double the rotational speed and double the rotator cylinder diameter, the output power goes up by a factor of 16 times. Now, this machine has got positive feedback. And like the conical Clem engine, you have to put throttle to stop it rotating so fast that it drives itself apart and it disintegrates itself. But the general principle is very simple. You have in the center a cylinder which is cylindrical. On the outside edge of the cylinder, there are little jets which are effectively jet engine jets which push the rotor round. The rotor is fed by water from a sump. It goes through your control valve, which allows you to stop it running itself to pieces. It goes through this pump and gets pumped into the cylinder. And once it gets going, you don't need the pump anymore, so the pump can be switched out. And the rotating cylinder spins so hard and so fast that it actually keeps itself moving all the time. And the output shaft here is geared up to a generator and spins a generator, which gives you a lot of output power. It's an interesting sort of concept, and it works very well indeed. It involves mainly you welding, typically, some metal in producing this thing, but it is effectively an X-shaped support for a circular cylinder disc. What happens is the water is taken from the sump, pushed round, or pulled round rather, by the suction inside the disc, and the disc gets the water pushed out through the nozzles at the edge. The hard thing of this particular design is to get a rotational water fitting, even though the generator itself runs cold at all times. This particular coupling that I'm showing here is rated at 2000 RPM, but you would expect to be rotating your particular cylinder at probably about 400. But this is one of more than one. This is one of several that are available on the web, which you can order and buy in if you want. Now, there is an important factor for boosting the power in this, and that is you've got 16 nozzle jets with a 1.5 millimeter diameter hole in them, inclined at 25 or 30 degrees from the tangent at the edge of the cylinder where it's connected. But what you do is you put a fixed plate onto the housing itself. And it moves past. The jet of water coming out of your jet hits the fixed plate. Now this is important. It's not immediately obvious why this is important, but this is an effect that I'm told is experienced by firefighters holding a hose. If they hold the hose so that the water sprays out into an open area, it's easy. If they spray it onto a concrete wall, they get pushed backwards very strongly. And that's an effect that applies to this particular rotor. But that particular design by Donny Watts will allow you to generate easily enough energy to power a household. There's no question about that. You're talking many kilowatts of power if you want. And it's very simple. There's no electronics. There's no clever switching. The only thing you got to do is to control the inlet valve once the thing gets going. so that you keep the speed down to something manageable. Okay, next we come to a very effective invention by two French gentlemen, Michael Mayer and Yves Mace. The active material in this generator is iron. Now, iron is just a version of steel which has got a reduced amount of chromium and other additives in it. But this is just an iron bar set into an iron frame, and it has on it. You put DC into, and that turns the entire thing into an electromagnet. Coil number 2 is the hard one. You have to feed coil number 2 with a sine wave at a high frequency. We're talking 21 megahertz. 21 megahertz is not that easy to, but if you can generate 21 megahertz, then from coil 3, you can take off large amounts of energy. Where does the energy come from? It comes from converting the iron inside the iron bar from one isotope to another isotope. The iron starts off with isotope 56 of iron and ends up with isotope 54 of iron. And that is a very effective and high-powered generator if you can generate 21 megahertz. How are we doing for time?
We're doing fine for time.
Okay. Tell me when to stop. Okay. Next we have a very simple device indeed. This is a magnetic frame, the sort of thing you can get by taking a mains transformer apart. And into that frame you put a simple magnet, just one magnet, north and south, into the frame. And you pulse a coil on one side with DC, and the coil on the other side gets pulse DC coming out. Technically speaking, yes, what's coming out is really very close to being a sine wave rather than square wave. But forgive me for showing it as square wave, because it's easier for people to understand that way. But this is interesting. What you need to be careful of avoiding is making the magnet too strong. If the magnet's too strong, then the frame gets saturated and your pulsing DC has nowhere to go. You can't over-saturate a saturated frame. So the limitation on something like this is low power. You have to have a frame big enough to carry the magnetic flux that's flowing through the frame itself. This is a well-proven design. It's been proven by people on a forum, and one of the people testing this got an immediate coefficient of performance of 1.5. That is, there was 50% more power coming out than was being pushed into the actual frame. But the problem is, if your magnet's too strong, you will get nothing out. But that sort of design can be very effective. Thane Hines has produced an asymmetrical transformer, and the COP, or coefficient of performance, is always greater than 1. This is a picture of one of the styles of his transformer design. He has put a thick outer ring of conducting magnetic frame around the outside, and he has got two output coils. Coil number 3 is one output, coil number 2 is another output, and coil number 1 in the middle is an input coil. And he's got two output loads, load number 1 and load number 2. Now the thing is, when you pulse this, the power coming along from coil 1 has to go through this narrow section here shown by the blue arrows. And when it gets to the large outer frame, it goes through the output coils and back round to coil number 1. Now that's a relatively ineffective way of doing it. So what you do instead is you notice that when the coils are pulsed, they work fine on the first half of your sine wave, and your problem occurs on the second half of the sine wave because you get feedback from the output coils to the input coils. But in his design, what he has done is he's made the output go through two different paths backwards. One path, the beneficial one with the easier flow, easier magnetic flow, goes around the outside, and it goes in both directions, and it tends to cancel out where they hit each other. And what goes back along the central coil is relatively little of what would normally be there. Now, this picture here shows an actual test frame built by Thane Hines. It's one of several that he built. This particular frame has got a very effective operation. The coefficient of performance of this particular frame was bench tested at 39.6. In other words, the output power was more than 39 times the input power. And that's only because the transformer was asymmetrical. And so it doesn't automatically oppose itself when output power is increased. The way that motors and transformers are built nowadays is symmetrical, and deliberately so. It's a bit like trying to push start a car with 5 people, and you get 3 people at the back pushing the car forwards, and 2 people at the front pushing the car backwards. Not very logical, not very sensible, but this is the way they do it. And because it's symmetrical, it opposes itself internally. And if you want to increase the output power, it's like adding 2 more people at the back of the car to push it forwards, and 1 more person at the front pushing it backwards. So if you increase the power, if you increase the output power, you have to increase the input power, which is ridiculous. You don't need to do that. But you need to understand that we're talking here about transformers and frames. And the snag with these things is that for the frame to be able to carry a large power level without getting saturated by the magnetic flux that you're using, you have to have a very large and very heavy iron frame. You'll notice that in the mains distribution systems, the sub-transformers are in their own separate building. Okay, leaving that and coming on. Asymmetrical is the important point in nearly all of these things. Clement Figura was a very intelligent engineer, and he designed a number of things, but the most important one I would assess is this particular design here. And what he has done is he has created 21 separate electromagnets. The ones in green are input, and there are 2 sets of 7. 7 on the right and 7 on the left. They're both connected to an input at the top, and they have a separate output at the bottom. And what he does is he always has current flowing in one direction through these electromagnets, the green ones. But he alters the intensity of the current flow from right to left to right to left. And that creates an alternating magnetic flow in these yellow electromagnets, which are output magnets. Now, he used a battery in his house to actually generate this particular power, and he created 500 volts from his battery, and he powered his house from it. Now, please understand, if you're trying to replicate this, pay attention to the fact that there are 7. This isn't just being drawn in for fun. There are 7 separate electromagnets on each side, and they are positioned close together, side by side, and they interact with each other as you alter the magnetic flow. The same applies to the yellow ones, which are output. Now, he created various ways of doing this, but you can either use switching to get a difference on that, or you can do what he did, which is use a rotating ordinary small motor you're moving a switching arm round so that different levels of resistance are switched into the two sides. But this is a very powerful and very effective device. And it's something that is potentially able to power households or businesses. People who have got into trouble with the establishment are Barbosa and Lille of Brazil. They produced a generator, which they demonstrated, and they showed it drawing 172 kilowatts out of the ground in a closed loop. Their circuit's not at all easy to follow, quite possibly deliberately so. But they borrowed a meter from the local power company so that they could demonstrate how big the current flow was. And of course, the powers that be promptly said, "Oh, you stole this meter from the local power company. You're thieves." They weren't actually thieves. They borrowed it and they had everything in order. But they have been quiet for a long time. I imagine that they have been intimidated into silence. But the system has been replicated. And as the power is flowing from the earth into your load, the way that you manage to earth your system is very important. This is an exceptionally effective method here. These dots here represent 8-foot long copper rods being driven into the ground. They're 3 feet apart, and there are a lot of them. The one central strip here is one side, and all the rest are connected together on the other side. And it takes a piece of ground 15 feet by 24 feet to put all those particular rods in. Now, the circuit that's been used on this is shown here. The red line shows you the line, the positive line, the live line coming into this. And the blue line shows you the neutral. It's actually shown in black in America. In this country, it's brown. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. It's green-yellow. No, it's not. I tell a lie. It's blue. It is blue in the UK. But in America, it's that particular one is white. Okay. Now, this earth connection here is shown with these little triangular designations here. The wire is very thick. It's number 6 American wire gauge, which is a thick wire. Now, an interesting thing, you'll notice that this is a continuous loop. It's connected all the way through, round and round. And it is coupled gently and indirectly to the earth. And the power actually flows from the earth through the coupling into this loop, is transformed into a higher voltage, and it comes out as high power output. This particular arrangement here gives you 3 kilowatts of mains power. This unit here on the right is a 3 kilowatt inverter, which initially is powered by a battery, but then after is powered from the ground through the coils. Here, down here, is the continuous loop between the two coils. The coils have been wound on toroids. They don't have to be, but they are in this case. It could be squared rather than toroidal. That is a powerful unit that could be capable of running most households. 3 kilowatts is substantial. Your biggest load typically in a house is a washing machine, which at times can take 2.2 kilowatts. Usually it takes a good deal less. Alternatively, a tumble dryer can take about 2 kilowatts, typically, and they're effective. So you can run a washing machine and or a tumble dryer, which is one of the biggest loads you get in a house. Most of the other things are very small by comparison. Okay, moving on. We have a design of a very tiny little capsule here. This is less than 2 inches long. that is less than 50 millimeters long. This particular device is capable of outputting a kilowatt of power, and they reckon it can last for 70 years of continuous use. Now, it's a very simple design. It's got a quartz tube. I don't think it has to be quartz, but quartz is a good thing. And inside, it has little sections filled with copper powder or zinc powder or a chemical mixture. And the chemical mixture is a mixture of cadmium, phosphorus, and cobalt. That is atomic weights 112, 31, and 59, respectively. So all you have to do is make up one of these things. Now, the remarkable thing about this is that it becomes radioactive for about an hour if it's surrounded by an electromagnet and then subjected to a high-frequency electromagnetic wave for a few seconds. The unit is lead shielded for the periods when it's operational, and it is very small. This marked in red here is that little quartz tube of chemicals, and the output wires coming off the end caps. This big yellow thing here is a coil, which is part of the transmission coil. So that's the front view, that's the side view, and there's a capacitor built of lead sheets built into the base. Now, the thing is, the circuit is very simple. You merely generate through here an input high-frequency electromagnetic wave, and that activates the material inside in the tube, and that gives you, from a very tiny tube, 1 kilowatt for about an hour. So all you do is, coming up to the hour, is you give it another few seconds of electronic wave, and that keeps it going. Of course, I'm talking about one tube here. I can't think of any reason why you shouldn't have a row of them. So I can't see any reason why you shouldn't have 10 kilowatts or 100 kilowatts if you want. But most people seem scared to try this. I think they're frightened by the idea of having an X-ray, or what would you call it, an X-ray device operating. They're worried about radioactivity, which is not really all that dangerous, and it's easily handled. This is a tiny thing. It doesn't take a lot of lead to surround it. It's quite easy to do. Okay, moving on. Something now that doesn't require any electronics or understanding anything like this. You have a design from Chas Campbell in Australia. This is a very effective system. What he does is he gets an ordinary mains motor. His mains motor rotates at 1,430 revs per minute. And he gears it up through belts and various belts and through a shaft that has a 10 kilowatt flywheel attached to the shaft, and then through another pulley which spins a generator. Now the thing is, once this gets up to speed, what he does is he switches the input to the motor over from the mains to the output of the generator. Now this is very convenient, and it powers itself, and it powers other equipment that he wants to use, like drills and saws and the like. This is a photograph of his actual first construction. While he only has one flywheel here, which is the dark red object here, he does have these yellow discs attached to his pulleys, and they are slightly operational as flywheels themselves. The way that the flywheel gathers energy is it has a continuous inward acceleration. As Newton has pointed out, if you have something in motion, like a piece of the outside of a flywheel, it will keep going straight. But if you have something like a wheel here that pulls it around in a circle, to get it moving round in a circle, that piece of rim has to move inwards. So it has to accelerate inwards, and it does it all the time. So it's continuously accelerating inwards. Now that acceleration inwards creates an excess of power from the surrounding energy field, and that power becomes available in the flywheel as excess power. Chas has built or has proposed a larger version which can be home built using straight pieces which you can weld together quite easily. And all the details of welding it together and how to construct it and so on are in the main ebook, which you can download. Not these notes, but the main ebook. Right. This rotor is also weighted at the outside edge with concrete, which I haven't shown. But the cunning bit is it has a drive strip here. And the drive strip sticks out beyond the rim of the wheel. Now, this wheel is mounted horizontally. And surprisingly, it's just free to rotate. It doesn't have any form of drive other than this drive strip. Now, the drive strip is actually driven by 3 separate small drive motors with flywheels on. The flywheels have got a drive friction wheel, which connects with that drive wheel, the friction strip, drive strip, and that pushes these large rotor around. Now, the thing is, there are 3 of these, and there's only 1 drive strip. So these give the big flywheel 1 push per revolution. But there are 3 of them, so the flywheel gets 3 pushes per revolution, and the little flywheels only have to supply 1. So they rotate at their no load setting, which is 2.2 amps on mains, and the generator in the center can generate pretty much anything you want it to. So that's a very effective system which has got no electronics. It has no special constructional skills needed. It's a little large, admittedly. You need about 10 foot square and about 4 feet high in your back garden, if you have a back garden, in order to make this thing work. But you get a lot of power out of that. You can drive any generator you like from that particular arrangement. Okay, moving on again. Just let me stop and check. How are we doing for time?
Carry on, because it's
Okay. Tell me. All right, moving on now to the recent year of 1939. William Skinner of America produced a gravity-powered design, which he kept refining. And you'll find his 5th generation unit, which was filmed by the BBC Pathé News people in 1939, which is the beginning of World War II. And this system is so powerful that it was driven by a loop of thread. Now that system that he is operating has enough power for him to drive his metal cutting 12-foot long lathe and his other workshop equipment. It's very powerful. It's gravity powered. Now it's another very subtle design. It's a little difficult to understand it at first, but if you're old like me, you will have come across chairs which have got 4 separate legs, like in this diagram here, or this picture here. If you tilt a chair like that up from one top corner, so that all of the weight of the chair is sitting on 1 leg, and 3 legs are in midair, you can balance it there so that no real effort is needed to keep it balanced upright. But if you were to move the bit of the chair that you're holding just an inch or so to one side, the chair will swing round to line up underneath your finger. The chair is actually falling, but it's falling sideways. you think of something falling as something that moves closer to the ground. Well, this thing is falling, but it's not moving closer to the ground. And it can fall continuously, and it does fall continuously. Here's a picture of William Skinner with the bottom half of his device. These big vertical cylinders are the weights that he's using to go round and round. You can use weights, you see, rather than a chair, naturally. So if you have a weighted arm and you rotate the top of this arm slowly, the big heavy weight swings round to line up underneath it. But before it gets to underneath it, you've moved it further round. So it has to keep on falling round to try and catch up. But you adjust the speed of your motor so that it never ever catches up. It just goes round and round and round. And if it's any consolation to you, my mother used to scold me for nearly wearing out the carpet from swinging a chair around like that. But you can put a large weight, say the sort of things that you get as a dumbbell weight, onto an arm, and with a very simple arrangement here, you can spin the motor, and that drives through a universal joint, a shaft with, say, bicycle wheel gearing, that is a chain and a sprocket, to drive a 12-volt or other generator. And probably the best generator to use in something like that is one intended for a wind power system, because that's easy to do as such. Okay, that, like nearly all systems, you can start it off with a battery. But once it gets going, you switch over to the output of the generator, which gives you output power and drives the machine and charges your extra battery if you wanted to. But that's a very simple system and very effective. Okay. Is it possible to check if I can be heard? Can we ask somebody?
Yes.
Yeah, you're being heard fine. It works really well.
Okay, okay, fine. Thank you. Okay, right. We come on to another system here. This is a rather complicated version of it. This is by David Kwok of Australia. And this is a mains power generator, and he offers them for sale in sizes up to 100 kilowatts. Now what it is two floats. These floats move up and down a vertical metal rod. And the system is powered by compressed air, which is fed in through here from a compressed air tank. When these tanks are filled with air, they want to float, so they move upwards. But as they move upwards, they drag with them a wire which is counterbalanced. And you have one float going up and one float going down. When they get to the top, they're filled with water. When they get to the bottom, they're filled with air. And the entire system then spins a generator. That system can be simplified very considerably, which you'll find in the eBook. It doesn't have to be done that way, and it doesn't have to have compressed air like that. You don't necessarily have to have access to the bottom of your water tank. You can use an existing well if you want. And in India, a lot of the wells have dried up, and people would very much like to use them to generate power. This yellow bar at the bottom is the output drive, which spins a generator. And the generator gives you a lot of power. David calls his design the Hydro, H-I-D-R-O, or Hydro perhaps. And it's very effective. Of course, big generators cost a lot of money. But there's no reason why you can't have a 10 kilowatt or a 100 kilowatt generator if you want. You can contact David in Australia if you wish. Okay, that's a big, heavy, expensive thing. Let's go for something that is extremely cheap and very, very simple. It's from a guy in Russia whose name he uses on the web as Alex Kor. He's shared quite a number of different designs. This particular one charges 4 batteries, is driven by 1 battery, it has 1 transistor, it has 1 resistor, it has 1 little capacitor, and 200 turns of wire on a cardboard tube. It has an on-off switch if you want to be fancy. You don't have to have one. You can just connect to the battery. And it has a neon, which is effectively a spark gap. This particular neon spark gap is typical. It's called a neon bulb, and it triggers somewhere between 90 volts and 110 volts. Now, the reason it's in this particular circuit is this particular circuit is sometimes referred to as a joule teeth. But this is very powerful joule teeth. And the current fed in through the resistor to this transistor is quite large. And because of that, the wire on this coil is fairly strong. It's using an MJE 13009 transistor. The transistor has got 3 connections, a base, a collector, an emitter. And the heatsink flap is also connected to the collector. Now, this is an extremely powerful transistor. It can handle 400 volts. It can handle a continuous current of 12 amps. It can handle 24 amps if you're going to pulse it. And it can dissipate 100 watts. So it's an extremely potent transistor as such. Some countries sell it under the name of T13009, but an extremely powerful and effective device. So what happens is the circuit operates very simply. The transistor has got an open circuit effectively between the collector and the emitter if no current has been fed through the base. So effectively, there's no current fed anywhere in the circuit. However, if you power up the circuit and current flows through the coil, through the resistor, into the base, then the transistor switches on. When it switches on, it drives a very strong current through this red coil, and the voltage at the collector is taken off through this diode and feeds the 4 batteries that are being charged. Now, this is a very effective system. You can use 1 battery and charge 4 batteries. And it is extremely cheap. It's very easy to build. And the particular coil that you wind is just wound with 2 strands of wire. It's not very large amount of wire needed at all. And Alex prefers to use a coil of about 1.5 inches or 40 millimeters in diameter. It's very effective, though.
Patrick, sorry, excuse me.
Yes?
Patrick, hello.
Yes?
Excuse me, Peter here. What is the value of the resistor? Because you gave everything but the value of the resistor. There is no, oh, sorry, not the resistor, the diode.
The diode can be any diode you want. Personally, I would recommend a UF5408, which is 1,000 volts, 3 amps, and very fast acting. But I imagine that Alex just used a 1N4007, which only costs 3p. A diode of 3p is not a problem. But I personally would use a 5408, a UF5408, because they're cheap, they're very powerful, they're very robust. The only thing I have against them is they don't plug in test boards, breadboards. But that's a very simple arrangement and very effective as well. Now, Lawrence Chung also started with the joule teeth. He calls his system FLEET, fleet. He reckons that the performance of this particular design is COP of 10. In other words, 10 times more power out than in. I personally use this circuit to check that free energy definitely does exist. But I go on to that in a minute. the system is very careful to avoid taking power off the collector of the transistor. If you take power off the collector of the transistor, it takes current from the battery. If you don't want to take current from the battery, which you usually don't, then ideally what you want to do is take the output power from a second winding around your toroid. Now this toroid is not a fancy ferrite toroid. This is a big plastic ring. The one that I used was about 8 inches in diameter and about 1 inch across. And I wound it with wire that was available from the local hardware shop. And there are 2 windings on this. Both of the windings are bifilar. So initially you wind all the way around the toroid with 2 strands, and then you connected the standard way for a dual teeth. This is a typical dual teeth arrangement. But then you wind a second layer round in a bifilar winding. This is the layer that's shown in grey and blue if you're not colorblind. And about 30% of men are colorblind. Okay, now I found that I preferred and found it more effective to use 4 diodes instead of 1. So I used a diode bridge as shown on this particular layout on the right. And you notice that the layout on the right doesn't use soldering. It doesn't use anything fancy. And it shows you which way round the diodes can be connected. I was using 1N4007 diodes because they're effective and very, very cheap. Now that diode bridge worked quite nicely for me. This particular arrangement worked fine for me. And if I was going to do it again, I would use a TIP 132. That's a low-cost NPN transistor. It has a gain of 1,000, and it is extremely powerful, handles 100 volts, 4 amps, and it is robust. But what I did was I put a 12-volt battery, lead-acid battery, as the output load. I used a 12-volt, small 12-volt lead-acid battery as the input, and no other connections anywhere. So we're talking about one battery charging one other battery. So having done that for some hours, I swapped the batteries over and did it again. Then I swapped the batteries over and did it a 3rd time. Then I measured it all carefully. Now with the lead-acid battery, you have to leave it at least an hour for the chemical action inside the battery to finish its operation. Normally the output voltage on the battery will drop while that's happening. So you can't get a reliable voltage measurement on the battery until such time as everything is quietened down. Now, I measured both batteries before and after this, and both batteries had more genuine, usable power in them. But where did the power come from? There was no outside source of electricity. And worse than that, a lead-acid battery wastes half of everything you put into it. In other words, it has an efficiency of only 50%. So for this circuit to have gained power, the dual-teeth circuit as wound here with 2 bifilar coils has to have a COP, coefficient of performance, of more than 2. Now, Lawrence Young says it's got a COP of 10. I don't know. I didn't check. I just confirmed to my own satisfaction that without a question, free energy is available and you can have it if you want it. There are actually more than 20 different ways of doing it. But if you want to go that route, Ron Pugh of Canada has built a very nice rotational battery charger. It has a COP of 13 when used with a 24-volt input and a 24-volt output for charging batteries. Now he machined a rotor, very nice rotor, out of aluminium. Now a word of warning, aluminium and copper are both highly magnetic, though people will not believe you if you say that. If you try sticking a permanent magnet to aluminium, it won't stick. If you try sticking it to copper, it won't stick. But when you make a rotor in aluminium, the rotor being aluminium has an effect on the end of the permanent magnets that's pointing inwards towards the shaft, the output shaft. But anyway, ignoring that for the moment, Ron gives a way of how to match and pair up magnets, but he's used 6 pairs here with the north pole on the outside, and he positions 3 coils which can be adjusted to the outside of the rim of his circular rotor. Now, when you're running something like this, you can't afford on a circuit of this type to have the input and output battery at the same voltage level. So you have to put the charging battery on top of the drive battery. Now, if you're going to do that, there are a couple of things that you need to do. Ron has wound his particular coils with 5 separate strands of copper wire in each. And he uses one coil to give a trigger as to when the transistor should fire. And he's using another coil to give a drive from the transistor to power the remaining 3 coils. And those remaining 3 coils are shown as connected together as an output. But in actual fact, the way that you should do it is you take 3 diodes to lower the output the output impedance of the output flow of energy, and you feed each of those 3 diodes, the set of 3, back to the battery you're charging with its own separate wire. This is quite important. You want a low impedance on your diodes and a separate wire feeding the battery being charged. So here you see there are 4 separate wires going to the one battery being charged. That's because the trigger signal is being fed along to different transistors, and each transistor drives one of the coils. It's a very effective way of doing it. Now, he's got 3 sections on this, and he uses 3 5-strand coils, but he's able to use 4 of the coils for output each time if he wants. Now, you can do it sensibly with separate wires, or you can go the way that he did it and just use one wire to the charging battery. It's entirely up to you, but the right way to do it is with a separate wire. Now, this is the way that he built it. He built it the way that John Bedini recommends, that is, in mid-air, using direct connections wire to wire. It's not necessarily the way that I would choose to do it, but then I haven't built this. I do different things. Now, the way he did it is he starts off and he twists the 5 strands of wire together to get a continuously twisted string, which he winds onto a reel. Then he uses his winder to wind separate layers of wire, first from right to left, then from left to right, then right to left, layer upon layer upon layer, until the spool is finished and full. His spool has got slots in the base, so that he can adjust them inwards and outwards to find the optimum position. And that is a very effective system that he's using, and very straightforward. Nice quality of work. And we have to thank Ron for sharing his details there. Very impressive. We come now to an interesting one. This is a design from a guy in South Africa who wants to stay he wants to stay incognito. He wants to be anonymous. If you want to know what he looks like, his picture is in the eBook. He has managed to extract nearly all of the components he uses from equipment that has been dumped by companies. He finds it difficult to actually get electronic components. But he's got a lot of these old batteries from uninterruptible power supplies. They've been left for ages and ages, and he's managed to retrieve them and resuscitate them. Now, he's built a device which outputs power continuously, indefinitely. And it's quite a small tabletop device. It's not difficult to understand. It's not difficult to build. This is an initial version that he had. And you notice the red arrow down here showing, again, a slot in the mounting of the coil so that it can be slid inwards or outwards. Now, he started off with this circuit. He built a rotor, and in the rotor, he put magnets, and the magnets spin round past a coil which has got core, metal core. As it goes past, it powers the coils. It feeds, like the Joule thief, it feeds the current to the base of the transistor, which drops the resistance between the collector and emitter to 0, which drives a strong current through coil number 2, and powers up coil number 3 as well. Now that output from coil number 3 is rectified and fed back to the drive battery here, which is one of his resuscitated batteries. But also from the collector is taken off a UF5408 diode, which feeds a stack of 4 batteries which are being charged. But from one of these batteries, he uses an inverter, mains inverter, and a load of ordinary mains equipment. Now this is very effective, and he found that he could take 40 watts continuously off that forever and ever. Now, being very cautious guy, he ran it for 3 weeks solid, which is a remarkable constraint for an inventor. Really remarkable. Because most inventors let it run for a day or so and say, right, well, let me take it apart and see if I can make it better. But he's done a lot of experimentation on it. And one of the circuits that he's now sharing is this. He's got a central rotor with 5 magnets in, and he's got 5 coils around the outside. He's only using 1 battery. Initially, that 1 battery powers the inverter, gives you 220 volts, and powers a 60-watt bulb. He also powers a mains transformer, step-down transformer, known as a power supply unit. And that, with its diode and capacitor, produces 42 volts, which is used by the transistor to drive the entire system. And the 4 extra coils here take power out and feed it back into the input. And this is a system that uses only one 12-volt battery, very simple in construction. It does have electronics, but not very complicated. Most of what you have there can be got commercially. It's generally speaking not a difficult thing to do, and that runs continuously forever and ever, outputting power. All right, the power is not very large. He claims 40 watts. Personally, I think it's 60, but we won't argue about it. Just let me remark that I can get 1,000 lux of lighting from 1.5 watts. So you can imagine what I could do in lighting with 40 watts. You certainly would want sunglasses. Tell you that much. Okay, we come on now to...
can I interrupt
yes?
a second?
Sure.
Since I'm pressing for time. I want to share this circuit, but can I have 5 minutes of your time to share so I can be on my way? Because
yes, sure. Go ahead.
So is it okay? Can I share screen just to share, just to satisfy?
Yeah.
Just 5 minutes only.
He wants.
Okay.
He wants.
Okay. Can you unshare your screen? Just give me 5 minutes, and then I want.
Okay, go on then.
Yeah, just 5 minutes. That's all I need.
What do you press?
Yes. Okay. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Can you, someone, can you highlight me real quick? Just.
Okay, we've got to stop screen shares. We know where which spot you can continue from. Yeah.
Okay.
Go on then.
Yes, I just want 5 minutes before, because I'm getting ready for work and I'm going to be off of Wi-Fi, so I can't do anything after that.
Ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Am I on? Okay,
Yeah.
okay, spotlight me or something.
I
Okay. Okay, great. Hi, my name's Kosal. I'm the friend of Chris and James Rink and all the free energy people. Sorry for the interruption. I only have 5 minutes. I just want to share that my latest ordeal, I was making a quantum plant cyborg, and also we have crystal. It's very important. And also this is designed for this version. This can handle each side. It's basically a spiral capacitor, as you can see, according to design, because each part can have its own power strip. And the most important thing, each power strip or each side can handle infinite load. The idea is to have spiral. I don't know, I received this from the spiritual world and we built it. And my friend Philip, who is in here, and Jose also built it. And each one of them tested independently, and it's very powerful. It can handle so many load and produce. It take what you give it and it make more of it. And I don't know how it does it. Don't ask me. Maybe someone who can explain it. I just follow what the spirit give me the vision, and because I can hear them. Anyway, they took me from this to crystal, and they told me how to use it, put into plant, and they also told me to take circuitry, and I'm going to take you outside a minute from now, and cut it like this. Can you see this component, and just put into plant? And they told me that plant has the ability to regenerate and interact with digital circuitry, because every digital circuitry is made from some kind of silicon like crystal, and they want me to integrate it and later to use zinc and copper and magnesium stick into a plant to produce electricity, plus some kind of circuit called booster circuit. I got it from Amazon. And the booster circuit, you can use it with to take the power from the plant. And then that will power up the inverter. From the inverter, this device can be plugged into. And that that was they recommend me to do. So anyway, let me take you to see the Cyborg plant and the plant battery. It's quite a time-consuming process to make this type. I have only 3 minutes left, right? So I make this quick. Hope I have Wi-Fi in my backyard. This is my garden. I use this to experiment. I'm preparing out this plant for a plant battery. So after I cut the circuitry, and I stick them here, you can see I put the plant in the circuit. Can you see the silicon? And then I tie it with a magnetic wire so the plant will grow into it. And later I'm going to put a copper magnesium bar to get the power from the plant. And and this is the crystal. I use ginger root and plant and create me the quantum battery. But it'll take time for the plant to grow. So I left it here and taking care of it. It's time consuming. You can see the crystal, there's 3. It's actually 3 crystal, but I bury 2 of them. Only one of them show up, and that's ginger root. And then the final is this plant, where I use different mint plant and stitching them to there to grow, so it look like this. And then the circuitry, this one is right here. So that would take several weeks to heal, and after that, everything should good to go. Then I can use different copper and magnesium or copper and zinc to get the power from the root. So that's how I want to share. This is an okra plant, by the way. And this is some kind of mint. It look like this, and it grow everywhere. So any question? Everything good?
Yes, Kusal, thank you for your introduction of what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Patrick, want to comment on that?
Yeah. Anything?
It's all
so
energy. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm interested in combining nature with technology, because I know plant is very intelligent. They understand mathematics. You can talk to them, and can be produced power source. It don't produce much power, but some reason my heart are drawn to plant. So, and I seem to love it. So, okay, thank you for your time, and any comment, just any questions, just let me know. I mean, I'm just exploring, you know, and we exploring together. So thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Fizz. Thank you, everyone. And also I want Philip. Is he in here? Can he say something? He's also built the device also, that the spiral device. Philip from England, and Jose. Well, I don't know where he at, but
Yeah. Philip and Jose will talk with you after we finish the presentation here. I'll be more curious to see how you guys are doing with your projects. Thank you, Kosal.
thank you. Yes, I see. I'm going to work now. I won't have Wi-Fi, but okay, thank you. Okay.
Bye, Kosal.
Bye-bye. I'm gonna be away from Wi-Fi, so.
Thank you for joining us today, Kuso. Okay,
My
Press,
pleasure.
over to you, Press. You take over the chairing the meeting from now on. Yeah, and then you can invite Patrick back to continue.
Okay. Hello, Patrick. Let's see if we get you back. I've got Kosal's image on the front here, and
Yes, we need to share the document again.
Yes,
yeah,
the three of us here.
Phil, can you do that?
On the right hand side, okay. Yeah, and Patrick's here on my left, and Patrick's now ready to continue. So I'm going to screen share now. Bye, Kuso. Take care. A screen
Thank
share.
you.
Okay. So here,
Yeah,
back
okay.
on.
Right. Okay. This is a particularly important part of the information. This is from Howard Haley of the UK. He's got very advanced knowledge of free energy and a very considerable understanding of things which most people don't know. This is a 1-wire battery charger.
Can you all hear Patrick?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Now this is particularly interesting. This particular circuit has been independently replicated and confirmed. Okay, it needs some electronics, but ignoring that for the moment, this little 555 circuit generates a charging frequency of pulses. That powers an FET transistor, an IRF 9130 type, as shown here. Now, that drives the input side of a large step-up transformer. The step-up has got 3,000 turns on the outside and 40 turns on the primary. And it comes then through 2 diodes to charge a stack of batteries. A stack of batteries are particularly important, and they charge up, and through a choke which amplifies cold energy, it triggers the neons which are across the silicon control rectifier, the 2N6509G, and that feeds a strong pulse of energy into the battery, or a capacitor if you want to use a capacitor. Now, this is a very important thing itself. First of all, there are differences between conditioned batteries and conditioned capacitors as opposed to ordinary batteries and ordinary capacitors. To condition a battery, it needs to be charged with cold electricity and discharged again many times. Cold electricity is either AC electricity at high frequency, that is typically 20 kilohertz, which I see is misprinted here, or DC at high voltage. Cold electricity flows outside the wires, and so Ohm's law does not apply, but instead current equals voltage times resistance times a constant, which needs to be determined by experimentation. It's also possible to get cold electricity from pulse DC of over 80 volts, and with that method, the sharper and the faster the pulses are, the better. When you first pulse an AC or DC capacitor, it behaves normally, but after about 12 hours of continuous pulsing, the capacitor changes and charges much faster than it did before, and when the power source is switched off, it continues charging, and that can happen for up to 3 minutes. Now, you need to be very careful with this battery charging circuit. It can kill you. This description must not, under any circumstances, be considered to be a recommendation that you should actually build a circuit, as this presentation is for information purposes only. Okay, now Howard has tested a conditioned capacitor, connected it between two earth rods, 10 feet or 3 meters apart, and he gave up watching the lit neon after half an hour. So this is the way that it was wired up, and the neon was lit. And the neon needs 90 volts at least to be able to light up. And this is just with 2 earth rods and a conditioned capacitor. And the question has been asked, why in this circuit here do you have 5 450 volt capacitors? Because all it'll charge up to is 180 volts, which any one of those capacitors could manage. Well, the answer to that is subtle. First of all, this is the way that a capacitor charging is represented. The voltage increases, and as it gets fuller and fuller, the rate of increase tails off. The red lines show the average rate for any time period. The steeper the red line is, the faster the capacitor is charging. So what Howard does is he keeps the charging of his capacitors in the first 10% of the capacitor charge. So he uses 5 high voltage capacitors to get a very fast rise of voltage across this capacitor. And that very fast rise is extremely helpful. It's fed through a choke. A choke normally blocks DC pulses and it lets DC itself in, but it amplifies cold electricity. So the cold electricity is getting a boost in this particular circuit, and then it's fired into the battery as such. Now that's something that didn't really sink in to me until recently. Now, he says, importantly, a conditioned capacitor loses its conditioning if it's left unused for some time. In the case of Howard, he found it was 3 weeks. This is interesting because I used this particular DC to DC converter shown here, which is a cheap converter available on the internet. And I used it in this circuit, and I got a bit shocked about this. I used a 12-volt battery and tried self-charging it using this particular DC to DC inverter as being the oscillator. I put in a choke. I don't think the choke is necessary, but I did. And I used it with a 12-volt, 12-amp-hour mobility scooter battery. It worked extremely well. Charged the battery very fast indeed. So I disconnected the battery, measured the voltage, and then let the battery sit for an hour so that the chemical process would stop off and I could get a reliable reading of the voltage, which is normally lower. However, I was amazed to see that the voltage had risen further instead of dropping. I didn't follow up on that because I was busy developing self-powered lighting. When I got back to experimenting with the battery self-charging, I never could replicate that style of charging. But it occurs to me, in the light of what Howard said, that the capacitors on the converter board, which had been heavily used in earlier testing in the lighting circuits, had probably become conditioned, and therefore this circuit was operating differently than it was intended to do. But that is something that I found extremely interesting. Now, I think I've probably spoken long enough for this particular session. What do you think?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, so let's stop off there.
Almost 2 hours.
Okay, let's stop there.
We can continue in another meeting.
Yeah.
Fres, Patrick says he's going to stop here because it's going on quite a bit now because we only have a 2-hour meeting. So I want to pass over the microphone to you now, Fres.
Okay, thank you very
Yeah.
much, and thank you.
Philip, I mean, Patrick will continue with the rest of his presentation in another meeting, okay?
Excellent.
Okay.
Perhaps after
Cool.
after Elizabeth, the next meeting, if the other speaker that is being tentatively put on the website can't make it, then Patrick will continue with that. That is depending on whether his Zoom is working on his internet. Okay, right.
I
Over to
noticed.
you now, Fres.
I noticed his mention about cold energy, just like I did, and many free energy people said the same similar thing independently.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm gonna. We'll have just Patrick and I on right now, and I'll have others mute. I'm gonna ask one question because the first two he answered in the first introduction. When we talk about Tesla, he did a lot of work with coils and high frequency and high voltage. And in Tesla circuitry, he did not have any transistors. And they just hadn't been developed yet. And most of our transistors work on low voltage. Have you seen anything that would function as in maybe a coil design that would mimic a transistor at a higher frequency or a higher voltage? And that's my question for you.
Okay, go on then, Patrick.
Sorry, were you asking me a question?
Yes, I was asking a question. Since there was no
Your sound was out.
Go ahead.
Sorry, try again.
Tesla worked with high voltage, and in his circuitry he used mostly coils and spark gaps, etc., earth grounds. But he didn't have any transistors. They hadn't been invented yet. And transistors work really well at low voltage. We're working at getting them to take a little bit higher. I was wondering if you came across anything that would possibly resemble a coil that would mimic a transistor for the higher voltages and amperage.
Generally speaking, it's easier to just use a spark gap itself. In this set of notes that you can download if you want, you will find various ways of doing that. Tesla tended to use two pointed magnets to snuff out the spark gap very quickly. But it is perfectly possible to get a fast spark operation without doing anything fancy in the way of a spark gap. Don Smith tended to use gas-filled circuits, which you try to put me off.
Sorry.
We tended to use gas-filled devices, which work perfectly well. Now he was using systems which had got.
No, let me have screen share. Patrick's just going to screen share, okay, so he can explain the answer better.
You try to find somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, the situation is that Don Smith did quite a number of effective systems which didn't use spark gaps as such. No. And you will see in some of his presentations that he has opted to use a device here, which is a gas discharge tube. You can buy those nowadays quite readily, and that operates quite well as a spark gap. And you can use high voltages with them if you want. They have a whole range of those, and they can be bought in voltages into thousands of volts as far as I can recall. I certainly bought some of them to play around with, but the fastest single operation is a spark gap, and a snuffed spark gap like Tesla used. So from that point of view, you have got a spark gap as being probably the best thing to use.
Okay. Okay. Do we have Elizabeth online? Yes, we do. Elizabeth, I'm sorry that you didn't make it in earlier. Did you have some questions for Patrick?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay, thank you. I'll open the floor up. Unmute yourself, one person, and identify who you are, please. And if you can ask Patrick a question, that'd be great.
Hello, Peter again. I would like to thank you, Patrick, for all your contribution, because I'm in a grade of, I'm in a grade research of such devices. And so thank you, kudos to you that you're, spending so much time on it. And I've got a bunch of people, because I'm Polish person, yes, and I've got a bunch of people who don't understand English, yet they want to build something. And I can say that I will be trying, after this recording, I will be going through the advice you've given on those devices, and I would like to have the simplest device possible listed in your book, which could be, the main to try. So it won't cost you a lot of fortune to do it. It won't cost you a lot of hassle. You can give it a try. I can take my risk on my own, in any way it's necessary. I know electronics, so I can fix electronic goods. I can build up electronics. I'm 16 years in IT as well, so so I've got no problem with that. So any project which you would recommend, to start up the let's say adventure, because I tried some of them, only probably some details were wrong, that it wasn't working. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. The circuit that I showed you earlier on, which has one battery charging 4, is very simple and very cheap to make. Very cheap. And if you've got a voltmeter, there's no particular reason why you shouldn't try that.
What's this?
Okay, can you show just for a second which one it is, so I can save up, as a note, and I can go to your book and I can find it there,
Yes,
please.
Yeah, well, that ain't gonna happen again.
Oh, that time again.
I think someone's unmuted. No. I'm sorry you have to scroll because of me so much.
That's okay. It's
It's
no
a good
problem.
question, Peter.
If you download this particular document, you'll see it there.
I'll put a link on the website for you guys to download it, okay?
I got a question. If just one question, basically, that's.
Go ahead.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
You scrolling the other. Go ahead, Luke.
Okay. Have any Peter? Is it Peter, right? Have you ever
Correct.
worked with crystal plant to get 0 point energy?
I did get some wee, but it's a small, tiny current only, and I don't know of any method of boosting it. Now with those technologies which Patrick is introducing, there might be a chance for it.
Oh no, I mean the I don't know his name, the guest speaker, the
Patrick.
guy that sit with Crystal.
Oh, Patrick, you're talking about
Yeah.
Patrick, the presenter?
Yeah, the gentleman that was doing all the hosting today. I mean, talking today. I don't know his name.
Patrick Kelly, also.
Say it again, please.
Patrick Kelly.
Patrick Kelly.
Patrick.
Yeah.
Yes, Patrick. Yes, Patrick. I want to ask you, have any other inventor work with crystal and plant that you run across to get free energy?
Quite a number of people have. They have produced crystal batteries. And in this particular set of information that you can download, which you can from my website, www.free-energy-info.com/FESIG you'll find systems which operate an earth battery, which can produce 3 kilowatts. But generally speaking, people who produce crystal batteries have very low power outputs from the batteries. You're talking from one particular unit, typically about 1.2 volts or something like that in the battery itself. You can stack them so you can get maybe 12 volts, but the current that's available from those is extremely small. You're talking in terms of a few milliamps as a maximum. So the physical power that you can get from those sort of things is very, very small indeed.
I can confirm I've built and I've got exactly the same values.
Sorry, say again?
I can totally confirm I've got the same values which you're talking about. I've built crystal power cells as well myself.
Yes, right. Yes, that's been experienced by a lot of people over quite a number of years. You have people who are quite adept at doing it, but I haven't included it in my ebook because it's not a power level output big enough to interest me. I have nothing against chemical batteries. I have nothing against crystal batteries, especially ones that don't need to be recharged ever. But the output power needs to be some way realistic.
All right, Coastal.
Thank you. That is, yeah, that is great. I just because I heard inventor using quartz crystal, wrapping a coil and playing with frequency, and it started to glow green. And then there's YouTube talking about plant battery, and that's what really inspired me a lot lately, going toward plant and crystal.
Okay.
Thank you, Patrick,
Coastal.
and thank you, Peter. Yes, sir.
Peter's going to answer the question for Patrick for the questions on the floor on this self-charging battery. Go ahead.
Sorry, can you repeat for us?
Okay, basically, we're going to go back to your question, Peter, which was,
okay, yes,
and the answer was going to be the battery that charged itself. That is the file save that's going right now or next, please.
Yeah, Alex Core of Russia.
Yeah, what about Alex Core?
So yeah, I've written down it's Alex Core of Russia, and I've seen it. I've made I've used my snipping tool to have a page as well saved, so I will look into your book, because I've looked through it quite quickly. And if you're saying it's over there, I will be, I will be happy to check it out. So hope that all the details are included over there, and because sometimes when you look at these projects online, what I'm finding, something's always missing or something can be interpreted in a wrong way. So if it's completed, so thank you very much for the whole hassle. That will be, you know, really challenging for me, but I will be happy to do it.
In the ebook, you have my email address, and you can always ask me directly by email anytime.
Thank you.
So have you heard that clearly, everyone? Anybody can email questions to Patrick directly through his ebook email address.
Okay, we're running out of time. Real quick, is there another question out there, somebody? For Patrick?
If no one has a question, I will ask, which device is your favorite one, Patrick?
Surprisingly, the one from the guy in South Africa. It produces small amounts of power continuously, and it doesn't need any charging. It's very straightforward, and it is a practical tabletop device that most people could build, and which could be extremely useful. You could use it to run fans, you can use it to run lighting, you can use it to charge mobile phone batteries, you can charge eBook batteries and the like on it, you can run radios on it, you can run portable televisions on it, and there is great scope for actually increasing and improving the design as such. It is simple, it is straightforward, but it's just a development that this one guy, in very difficult circumstances, has produced for his own interest's sake. That's probably my favorite one.
And have you built it yourself already?
No, I haven't. I have only built a few things because in my ebook there are more than 150 different items. That is more than 2 items for everything I've spoken about tonight, which aren't mentioned here. So, you know, the volume is just physically too great. I couldn't possibly, under any circumstances, build, test, and verify every one of 150 different systems. It's not practical. Couldn't do it. Besides which, I'm a writer. I'm not a developer.
Makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think we've been long enough, and this will take a bit to upload to YouTube. And so I want to thank everybody for attending today.
Do you want to go around the table? Anybody wants to speak up? Eliza, I'm sure you have a couple of questions.
No, she asked her.
Yeah.
She asked her and she said no.
Oh, she said, oh, sorry. Okay, sorry, Fran. Go on then.
That was my go-to person, first off. I defer those with greater knowledge quickly when I'm out of questions.
Perhaps you want to go around the table. Maybe Etienne had something to say about the, well, you know, the scientists from Orion. Yeah, Asif is asking if Etienne has got anything to say. Etienne? Etienne, are you there? Oh, I see. I'm sorry, Etienne, you are being muted. Oh, sorry, Pras. You can't control it. I can, yeah. Hold on, let me just. Where are you, Etienne? I'm looking for you. You can unmute yourself, Etienne.
Okay, yeah, I was in the bathroom.
Okay, go then. I still
Okay,
want
so,
to know your opinion of this invention.
okay, just give me a second.
I think you sit here.
Well, on the guy who was working on the with plants and crystals. What I'm getting is that working with plants and crystal, well, it does produce low voltage. However, it's good to rewire the it's like to rewire more of the astral energies or to rewire power structures. So it is more useful to for example, to produce a device that will heal the environment, heal the plants. So from what I'm getting is that the plants that he's working with will grow better, healthier, and there's more work that can be done with that to heal himself and the environment, and that will kind of open the space for more guidance to come in. So it's more working with power, not as electricity, but like more using it's like a different form of power. And then a question that I was having that's a little bit related to that is I work a lot with metaphysical technologies, and there are some generators that are in place that generate energy, but more on like on the astral planes. And the question I have is how to establish a bridge between the energetic realm and the physical realm to bring that energy. And that's also making me think of there's one guy who makes free energy devices in Quebec. His name is Daniel Pomerleau. I don't know if you've heard of him. And he does like really weird devices. And it's like he'll take batteries and light bulbs, and like even without the wires, like his electric circuits don't make any sense whatsoever, but they work. But it's kind of wired in other planes, but nobody's been able to explain how he's doing it, nor reproduce it. So I don't know if you have any. Like one of the things he does in some of his boards, he like use things like macaroni or other wood or other things to kind of anchor the energy on the physical planes. But even me, I'm still scratching my head around that. So that would be a question that I have. I don't yet have an answer, and I'm not hearing any clear answer. Is how to kind of how to establish that bridge between both worlds. And I don't know if Patrick, you have any idea about that, or anyone else. But I'm not.
That's quite a common thing. Thomas Henry Moray did a lot of public demonstrations where he passed the energy through a sheet of glass and was able to produce kilowatts of heating power and working power, even though the energy was flowing through the glass. And he let people in the audience bring in their own piece of glass for it. The thing is, cold energy doesn't flow through wires at all. It flows near them, but not through them. This is why Ohm's law doesn't apply to them. This is the same thing that you get where the circuit can be powered. A circuit can be powered without wires going between point A and point B, but you get an energy flow between point A and point B. It's quite straightforward as far as cold energy is concerned. The thing is, we don't have a thing called electricity, really. We have a thing called electromagnetism. And magnetism is one face of it, and electricity is the other face of it. Magnetism is the powerful one. Electricity is the waste energy, the failed, the overhead. We use electricity. We should really be using magnetism rather than electricity. But the type of electricity that we use runs through equipment and heats it up. It's called hot electricity. Cold electricity is the reverse. And if you get too much current going through a cold electricity device and you're holding it, you can get frostbite instead of being burnt. Hot electricity, you get burnt. Cold electricity, you get frostbite.
What you're calling cold electricity, are you really referring to plasma or what?
I'm referring
Cold. I thought it called quantum vacuum energy or etheric energy.
that's,
Maybe.
yeah, that's a fancy way of describing it. But in actual fact, there are two types of energy that flow in a circuit and flow in equipment. One is hot energy and one is cold energy. The ineffective and inefficient and COP less than 1 equipment, all symmetrical, is hot electricity. The other types of electricity are cold, and they tend to adapt automatically to what's needed. Cold electricity has intelligence.
Yep, they call it quantum consciousness or something. Quantum intelligent consciousness. Physicists call it that.
If you say so.
Well, I had a comment also on the guy in Quebec, David. I actually went to see him, and he did a bunch of demonstration over a half day, and some very strange stuff. And it's correct, like Etienne said, he had one device that's made out of macaroni and crushed glass and other things, air coils. And we demonstrated.
Who is speaking, please?
This is Ulf.
Oh, okay. I have to. I'm a bit lost because I didn't see your picture. You're not showing yourself, so I can't video pin you.
No, that's all right, but I'm here. Okay, so I don't know if you heard that, but anyway, one of the devices he had was a small little thing, plexiglass, you could see through it, and we had what was it, a circle motor engine, circle saw. I don't know how many amps it was, like 16 or something, but we were driving that thing for half an hour, cutting wood with it, with nothing attached. It was pretty amazing, and it, like Kelly said, I mean, it's like, it is cold, you know, there's no heat or anything. But he also did some other demonstrations of stuff where one time this lady I met, she had another demonstration. He had a similar thing when I was there. It was basically, he picked up a piece of paper and wrote and made a little thing that looks like a cell phone. He would have to draw it, and then he typed on it and called this other guy next to the room and talked to him through the paper. This kind of stuff. It's kind of quite outside of the norm, but a very interesting experience.
Yes, you're talking about cold electricity operating there. Les
Yeah.
Brown built a very large pyramid, a very, very large pyramid. He took a ladder for him to get up to the peak of the pyramid itself. And he decided that he would take power off it, and he used a piece of wool. Now, wool's a very good carrier of cold electricity, and he connected it to the top of the pyramid. Then he went down the ladder and tried connecting the bottom of the piece of wool to an earthing point, and the power knocked him about 20 feet across the pyramid. He gave up doing it after that. He didn't want to fool with energy at that power.
Yeah, I know. I heard the story before. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So I have a question. So it is what we call energy, like the flow, well, the flow of electromagnetism on the physical plane, and cold energy would be the equivalent on the non-physical plane.
I'm afraid I don't know anything about non-physical planes.
Do you mean parallel reality?
Yeah, well, yeah, and some parallel.
Okay,
Yeah.
I can shed some light from my perspective and from result of my understanding and research. The cold energy are pretty much, okay, imagine we have a universe, but not one, infinite a number of universes nesting with in each other, and they share the same space with us. Okay.
About the cold electricity, there's an easier way of picturing this thing. And that one, essentially, you have to go back to the turn of the century. It's called the Phonon theory of conduction. And with that one, you have a longitudinal phonon, which is producing pressure. That's a pressure wave inside of the conductor. And that one is basically a wave that the electron surfs on. So, and with cold electricity, instead of the phonon, you have the antiphonon. and that's time reversed.
Kashmir effect. There's some people call that the Kashmir effect, where you put.
No, that's completely different. With the anti-phonon, it's basically time reversed phonon. It produces the exact opposite effects of hot electricity.
Temperate field. The only thing that can produce all of that basically is the quantum vacuum energy. But regular people call it the chi energy, the prana. Some call
Kosel, you're breaking up really bad.
energy.
Kosel, you're breaking up really, really bad.
And that's what I'm trying to
So
Can you hear me?
now we hear you, but you were cutting out.
I'm sorry. It's a big truck over here. It's blocking my signal. Anyway, that was today's physics. They call it quantum vacuum energy, according to David Wilcock. And Mr. Cash called it free plasma energy. I think he learned that from the Barbara Brenner Hand of Light. And then the Eastern culture called it the ki energy and chi or prana. But modern physics would call it, simply etheric. The older they call it etheric energy, and today they call it quantum vacuum energy. It has intelligence, and it's made of photon. It has a photon effect to it. So I think this is where we all of us, including Patrick, now he began to understand. I mean, all of us began to take on this journey like our ancestor did. Like the Egyptian built a pyramid to harness it, and so all the technology seems to have cones and spiral, mirroring everything like the Mayan, the Angkorian, what people, Cambodia and Tibet, and the Indonesia, the Maya and Aztec and America. They're all doing the same thing. They're using shape and fractal to harness this vacuum energy, the quantum energy, to power their device, and it's cold.
Well, you have to be careful about which energy you're talking about, because in the original Maxwell equations, you have 16 different solutions. So we have 16 different types of EM, and each one has its own.
We have parallel reality. That's the whole thing. That's why has its unique quantum signature, and each of this device can tap into it. And you're right, there is two type of energy.
No, more than two, there's 16.
So depending which device you are building, because they're all going to tap into some kind of parallel reality. And this energy going to bleed through and come with it, with their own intelligence, with their own law of physics that will influence our law of physics big time when we stay around it. Example of this is the UFO phenomenon. Each of this device use such energy, and they keep to pop in from our universe to another universe at will. So we as a people, we as a group, I think we're following the same footstep without even knowing it.
A message I'm getting now, and it's similar to a message I heard recently. Someone saying is it's like a lot of people lately were talking about the financial system and the like the federal account things, and he said that not all money is equal. Like money has an energy, and not all money is equal. So there's many different types. I think I'm getting the same message about electricity, that not all energy is the same. There are many different types of energies for different types of uses.
I got a question for all of you. Since the Earth is raising in vibration and people are changing physiologically and vibrationally, I think some electricity device will not work in the upcoming future. Only some will, and some will not. I mean, this is my perspective on what has been, influenced by a lot of esoteric thinkers, and also from information being given by being from other plane of existence, and that means from other time zone as well, like future or past. So
I think it is possible that some of the dynamics around energy will change with the higher vibration levels. So it could be possible that some types of devices would not work anymore, and other types of technologies would become possible just because of the different planes will react differently with each other.
Okay, so in conclusion, right, Etienne, would you
Yeah.
it's still worth our while by pursuing the some of the devices and the technologies that Patrick's very is popular with Patrick that we could learn to make from him, like the small little tiny device that everybody can learn to make cheaply. Is that?
I think it's feasible, but as I said, some device will not work once the you know, the human resonance is already changing from 7 to 1,000. I believe.
I don't think any of the devices presented will be affected because most of them are like very simple, based all the one based on mechanical.
Hold on, one at a time, please. I want to hear what Etienne. It's important. What did you say, Etienne?
Yes, I say I need device based on all the mechanical laws will remain exactly the same. I don't think any of the devices presented here will have any change, but there might be like it's more on subtleties. I mean, there will be things evolving in physics but I don't think it changed anything of what's been covered here. And I'm also getting the sense that there's a close relationship between what we call cold energy and chi energy, but it's not the same. I'm feeling like about 80% related, but I don't know exactly. I think what would be beneficial for everyone is to kind of meditate deeper on the concept of cold energy. What is that really? And just it's like asking for a download of information on cold energy, because I think we're kind of going blindly until we understand that fundamental concept that nobody ever learned at school. And that's
the truth is this concept already been learned by different people, different disciplines. For example, the martial art people use the so-called cold energy or yin energy for martial art purposes, you know?
Yeah,
they use Tai Chi, Qigong, and you know, what's it called, a Japanese art where they swing people around, Makudu or something, Akeda? I don't know how to say it. But anyway, this is one way they're using it.
Like I said, I think there's a 80% resonance between these two concepts, but it's still not exactly the same.
Yes, but you asking to build device that harness this energy. That's why we have to use crystal and plants and ashes and water, and some people use GANs, you know, and sacred geometry such as spiral and cone to harness this energy, because it seems to respond to this type of energy, according to David Wilcock, you know. And so I think a lot of teachers coming up, but it's up to us to build practical device to help them out. They have the sound practical, you know, guideline, but they can't build themselves. So they need all of us to build it, you know, all of us.
Right.
Can build it.
Solid engineering principles to go with it. And instead of, if your theory is not based on any kind of solid engineering, it's not a theory, it's an opinion. And then we have to filter those out.
Well, that's why you have to go and experiment and build. That's the only way. You want to know the truth, you have to build an experiment. Don't you agree? Don't everyone agree with you?
Yeah, perhaps don't want to spend too much time on this, but there's one thing I'm getting that I think is important, is perhaps the reason why crystal-based devices produce such a low voltage is because of the veil that separates the planes. And so that's what makes it very difficult or nearly impossible to take in energy from the vacuum into the physical plane, but the veil is getting thinner. But I think that's an area where the way it behaves might change over.
The Schumann resonance has changed from what I heard. If correct me if I'm wrong, I heard that the Schumann resonance have went up to 150 or maybe 1,000 now.
Well, actually, if I might correct that, the Schumann resonance is based on the velocity of light divided by the circumference of the planet. So unless you're going to change the circumference of the planet, that's not going to change, or the velocity of light.
Well, there's a website that say the Schumann resonance has changed a lot. It went up from 7.8 to 13, it went up to 15. And then recently it went up to 22 or 100 or something like that. So
Well,
that means a lot of physics is changing.
With Greg Braden, and yes, I mean, he's saying a lot about that, but I mean, you have to really base this on real principles.
Well, the principle.
All right, folks. I think we have to close the meeting because it's
okay, great.
But
well, I'm going to continue to work on crystal and plants, and I will report to everyone.
What I meant is the public meeting is closed, but we can still have continue with our private meeting. Okay, right? We can still continue with this discussion. I'm going to have to close the recording now. Yeah, Fres, over to you to close the meeting.
Yes, Fres. Thank you, Fres. Thank you, Crystal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Patrick.
Do you have everybody else muted while we close the meeting, please, Crystal? And I want to thank all of our guests and all the questions that were presented today. There will be more information at the bottom of the page when we get this uploaded. Thank you, Crystal, for your input and your great guests today. And I'm turning it back to you. Thank you, Crystal.
Thank you very much. So there being no other business, James, do you have any last thing to say?
The meeting was very, very amazing and enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. So anybody has anything last to say before for this meeting? I'm
just gonna close up.
Everybody invited to Stargate. A lot of the answers will be answered in your higher self.
Yes, the Stargate and the higher self.
Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording now. There being no other business, we adjourn this meeting.
Namaste.
Elizabeth will be talking about the end of transhumanism. That would be so cool, yeah, Elizabeth. Okay, so please stay tuned and get into the website to find out what's going on. And Elizabeth will be speaking on the 16th of August. Okay.
When is the next meeting?
The next meeting, go to the website to find out, please.
Okay.
I can tell you right now. I can tell you right now. Hang on. On the 16th of August, Eliza will be speaking on practical regeneration. It is about health, about an diseaseless society, the end to transhumanism. And it's very exciting because I saw a preview of her presentation. And,
cool. Very nice. Great job, Crystal, Crass, and everyone.
So I'm going to start
see you in the next meeting.
So see you next